Heresy shouldn't be this much fun, and it is, and it just is, especially when you're surrounded by women who are starting all these heretical movements and bringing back the ancient gnosis of Kybel and the other forgotten goddesses. Yeah, for those of you watching on video, you just saw 7 women, Gnostic women leaders and priestesses. And yes, what would the Gnostics be without women? Nowhere. As you see, it was extremely influential, the divine feminine. That's why the Gnostics just had to go, because we could not, we were turning into civilized society where the powers of nature just had to be suppressed, and that included women, that included the ancient ways of Ashira and Anat and Sekhmet, that include Dreamtime and the chaos and Tiamat and all that. So, as you know, one of the missions or quests of Ayambite is to restore the divine feminine and get a little bit balance back to our dying society. So, my name is Miguel Connor, and I am your Pompatus of Gnosis. And with us, it's an individual who has championed the divine feminine in Gnosticism and other traditions for that balance. Highly check out her book, The Other Goddess. It's a great read. We've had her on the show to discuss her, and I do cite her for my book, The Occult Elvis, as Elvis certainly was practicing Tantra and other things, as you will find out when it comes in April. And that is Dr. Joanna Kujawa. Joanna, great to have you back.
Thank you for having me back here, Miguel and Vance. And what a wonderful intro! The visuals, I've seen it before, but they're just gorgeous. And I like how you imagine them, because they're obviously women of wisdom, but they are also very feminine. They are sexy babes at the same time, and and they have a little bit of attitude. So they do not conform to what actually Carl Jung was talking about persona, right? So they were definitely went through the process of individuation and so on. So I really, really love it, because in my daily life, I have to, and I teach some courses on women in leadership and so on. And there is this at the moment, way of portraying women in particular way. And I said, okay, what was not good, right? We can agree in mainstream history. But what is now, it's kind of perverted too. So I'm trying to exactly portray the same vision of the feminine that you did at this beginning, because I don't want two things to happen. One thing is that it's like women versus men, because I think it's idiotic. We are one and we really need each other, and and it's very exciting that we need each other. And another thing is that the recent portrayal of women with modernity as really guys in skirts, except that we don't. Yeah, so I don't want that either. Is that because something is lost. Something is lost, and some people say, okay, what's actually lost? Something is lost, because at the beginning, woman was considered as prima mater, right? So just very passive, and I can understand. Myself, a woman, that I didn't like it. I didn't want to be this kind of passive thing, which I definitely am not. But at the same time, there were examples of women that you had that were not like that they champion wisdom, that was rejected. And no, they're not in majority, and so on. But I want us to look at this wisdom eventually in my next book and so on, and also in The Other Goddess, this other wisdom, and what's left of us, where we can find it. And some people say, oh, maybe it was not there at all. And I said, even if it was not there, which is not true, we have to then find it. You know what I mean? Because we desperately need a different form of consciousness, a different form of intelligence, that the one that is leading us to, where we are now. And that's not exactly a very good place. So sorry for this. I went for a rant. I didn't understand.
Beautiful. No, it's beautifully said. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, thanks for sharing, because it's important. Women should not act like men. It's really about again, anima animus, the Adam
Yeah.
and the primal man. It's
Yes.
a lot more subtle and nuanced than that, and it is extremely important today. And again, it's remarkable to think. I mean, even today, it's hard. Obviously, it's very hard for a woman to be in a leadership position because our society is still, well, it's still our society. We got work to do. But think 2,000 years ago, for Marcelina to open a church in Rome, for Mariam to start an entire religion in Jerusalem, for
Mm.
Mary Magdalene to be seen, as the bride of the Logos and have a whole community understanding and following her teachings, and Salome over and over. What the
Yes.
Gnostics did is nothing sort of remarkable, and even today is almost unheard of, right? Even today would be hard to do.
That's right. And I think that consciously or not, these women were championing this different form of consciousness, the
Mhm.
different part of the brain, because we are so lost, I think, right now in the mathematical, logical part of our brain. And we are going in a, really perplexing direction, I would say. Some people, and I agree with this, call it like post-human history, actually, because we are moving in this direction when we are losing somewhere in the process of losing our humanity. So I think they were trying to represent this different form of wisdom, so
Mhm.
not all women in the past, because there were accomplished women who were basically a part of the mainstream in a way, although we cannot diminish the accomplishments, such as like Hypatia, right? But she was actually, what John E. Taylor says, and what I repeated in The Other Goddess, one of the guys. So it was an amazing accomplishment that she was who she was, and she was a Platonist, so it's like top philosopher. It's a little bit like nowadays top quantum physicist, right? Because this is this
Right.
kind of paradigm through approximation. But, she was one of the guys, so to speak, right? When there was other women that they actually try to move a stream of consciousness in a different direction. And I think that this is what Gnostic women did. This is what, at least in my interpretation, Mary Magdalene did, and all the women that you mentioned, and you probably know even more about them, and so on, because I remember your lecture, so all of this is going on, and that's why I think it's still important, and that's why I'm kind of almost addicted to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Because it is such a difficult piece of work. It's not something like you sit and read and you say, oh, I'm feeling so inspired, lines are just speaking to me. It's just, what are you trying to tell me, right? In fact, I would not be able to work with this have I not been already initiated to esoteric Hinduism and Tantra
Mm.
and Kashmir Shaivism, which, I have learned to, like, in decoding what's, they don't want you to decode, or they assume that you know what they are talking about. Because very often this kind of text, which is also called often a twilight language, was for those who were either were already initiated, so they knew, right? Or
Mhm.
if you're not initiated and you want the text to initiate you, and I highly recommend it, but stick, one text, at least until you get it, and then you can move on to another text. So I've been like for 20 years with Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and I'm still working on it. So the text initiates you. So you have to have a certain form of communication with the text. And the more you read it, the more you get it, if you're not initiated. Because some people say, oh, how do I initiate it nowadays? And, I don't trust gurus, and, fair enough, But, the text can initiate you, but you have to read it with love and devotion, so to speak, and you have to communicate with the text. I think that every text has particular energy, and so does the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. So before, we even move to anything else, I would really like to thank, for example, Jean-Yves Leloup, the translator, one of the many translators, right? Because there are many translators. But what I
Mhm.
like about Jean-Yves Leloup, I like his interpretation, because for me, although I disagree on some points now, but I wouldn't be able to disagree with him if I didn't learn something from him, right? So this is
Right.
what a good disciple does. So it is because he, for me, what he did for the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is what Coleman Barks did for Rumi. So Coleman Barks is I'm not sure if he's still alive, or whether, he died recently. I'm not sure. I don't want to bury him if he's, but he's a poet. And his friend, whom I had opportunity to meet at some other talk, said, you have to retranslate, you have to give Rumi's poems wings, because they were translated via, what is it, Shambhala, very good publishing house, and and it was just so constipated, yes, it was well translated grammatically, but it didn't have a soul. And Coleman Barks translated, so all the translations that you see on Facebook are by Coleman Barks. Okay, so when the people really about the friend, that people really, it touches their hearts, and people said, oh, because irony of this, that he actually doesn't speak Farsi, right? But he was taking the translations and he was looking he's a Sufi, from a spiritual point of view, and translated it, and even the Iranian government gave him an award, because there's finally something in the West, somebody in the West translated Rumi in a way that it was actually sounds like it is in Farsi, that the spiritual message was done. So this is what, I think like Jean-Yves Leloup did for the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, but I kind of moved beyond it now, and I kind of connected with also its Egyptian roots, and also with, Neoplatonic roots, but then, of course, Neoplatonic roots, because then everybody was a Platonist, right? Like in those days, and also recently I was looking at Jung's process of individuation, and I realized it's not exactly the same, but he follows, similar steps to what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is talking about. So again, I believe that Carl Jung was extremely intuitive, so. I thought like maybe we could connect, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, not only with Egypt, but also with Jung. And I recently gave a talk at the Carl Jung Society to the, Jungian analysts, and they were happy with this. So I thought, okay, so maybe I'm not completely off the track with this, comparing, and they were really interested in this. And, we know, so maybe just, where would you like me to go with this? Where would you like me to start?
Let's see. First, Coleman Barks is very. And Vance, yes. Let me say, Vance, are you ready to animate your anima?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, with us we've got the Moondog. Hey, Vince.
Yeah, hi. Yeah. So I've just recently discovered that before 1974, women couldn't open bank accounts by themselves. They'd have to have a male co-signer.
I mean, give me a break,
Yeah,
so,
I was shocked.
Yeah. So, but nowadays, like even we are watching some shows with my husband, and it's just they're pushing this particular form of the feminine, very aggressive, very masculine. I think they're overcompensating. You know what I mean? So, and that's why in the other goddess I wanted to say there are so many archetypes. You don't have to be. It doesn't have to be from like prima mater. You're just waiting there for the male to impregnate you, right? And then you don't have to go into some wild chick necessarily, that is beating up everybody because you're angry all the time. There are things in between, which are of great value for women to identify with.
Exactly. No, very well said indeed. Well, to start, why don't we talk about, well, first for the audience, good to see everybody there in the chat room. God knows Graham, everybody else, if you have a question for Joanna as the interview goes, please super chat them, or complain against Vance and I, super chat them so we can separate them. Not much house cleaning right now. I've got a little promo in the middle. So yeah, why don't we talk the Gospel of Mary? Maybe give the audience a little background on what is the Gospel of Mary and what's the history, and then
yes.
Yeah.
So it was discovered in the 19th century, in 1996, in Akhmin, so in the area of Akhmin. And it is, I think, very interesting because very often, everybody focuses, even Jean-Yves Leloup, on the fact, and it's in Egypt.
Yeah. No, of course.
So that everybody goes to Judo, Christianity immediately, or Platonists or Neoplatonists, which was a major intellectual influence at the time. But I think the thing was found in Egypt. There must be some influences that are Egyptian, and only the part of Coptic part was found in Akhmin. The second one is in Aurynchus, I think. Oxynchres, I think it's
Right.
difficult to pronounce, which is on the other side of the Nile and closer to Alexandria. So, and then this part was in Greek, and they put it together, and of course still some pages are missing. So I would personally divide the Gospel of Mary Magdalene into parts 1 and part 2. Part 1 is basically Jesus addressing questions of the disciples, and part 2, Mary Magdalene addresses the question of the disciples. So somewhere in between, I guess, the crucifixion must have happened, and that's why there is a switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking, when I was thinking about this Egyptian connection, I was looking into some other writings, about Egyptian esoterica, which is not so easy to actually find, because Egypt is a big mystery, and, and also, everybody knows that the pyramids are probably much older than they are, the work of Graham Hancock and so on, but I never go into this. I go into the fact that there was esoteric tradition forever in Egypt, in which, which talks about Osiris, and it talks about Isis, goddess Isis, right? And it talks about Horus. And apparently, and I got it from Paul Branton and his fantastic book, Search in Secret Egypt. He also wrote another famous book, Search in Ancient India. Search in Secret India. And the reason why I connected with Paul Branton and his work is because his beginnings were the same as mine, so I could check his spiritual experiences from Hinduism, which he was a Westerner like us, and he went, and I could, because I had the same experiences, I could say, okay, this guy is authentic, he's legit. Right. So when he said some really mind-blowing things about Egypt and he had experiences there, I thought, okay, I already trust him, right? So he gives this, and through his studies, so it's not that just he come up with this interpretation of the myth of Isis and Osiris, that Osiris represents humanity before awakening. Isis is the hierophant or the teacher who is taking humanity into an enlightenment, or also through the rituals, to experience near-death experience and see other worlds, takes through the rituals, take us through rituals to the liminal space, where things actually happen. And then Horus is the awakened humanity. So this is the esoteric meaning of the whole myth of Isis and Osiris and Horus.
What about Set?
Set. Yeah, Set is probably the shadow to Osiris, right? But it's a good point. It's a good point. But I was actually, thank you for this. I didn't look into it because I was focusing recently on the Isis's shadow, which is Nephthys. With her naughty sister, So but maybe we'll go back to it when we discuss Jung. So they all have a shadow. So it's quite interesting also from Jungian perspective. So this is basically the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and for me the most important part, and with which I'm working currently. And I'm now, so obsessed that I'm applying it to everything, So it's the second part of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which basically talks about 4 levels of ascension.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I like to focus on. So first of all, in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, you have these 4 levels. So the first level is actually not discussed because there are some pieces, missing. But if you overimpose other systems, esoteric systems, you know that the number 1 was there because the second part of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene moves to level 2, which is the same level, right? So the first level, the missing level, is wrong identification, right? So wrong identification, which is across all, as far as I know, esoteric traditions. And actually, this is where the teaching says, just let me check here. I don't want to miss. Attachment to the matter is against your true nature. And another one, it is within you, it is not outside you. Be vigilant. So why is it significant? Because it talks about the attachment to the matter, which means wrong identification. And I think this is really we nowadays, especially modern scientific paradigm, is completely attached to there is only material. If something is even liminal, or spiritual, and as an intellectual, you really cannot be spiritual because you're completely discredited, right? So, so there is only the material and only the physical, which is extremely limiting. And I remember you had Tobias Churton here a while ago talking about his book on alchemy. And he says that the modern scientist looks at the universe and he sees this as a giant cow. And I really loved it, full of methane, full of methane. And we know what methane does, I just don't want to be vulgar, right? So they don't see the music of the spheres. They don't use the potentiality for intelligent life, they just see like a bunch of gases. And even if the colors are beautiful, it is because something mixed with something else, right? So this is where we are. And I think this is false identification. And I think if we extrapolate it a little bit further to what's going on nowadays, but I'm not going to go into it late, in this talk, it is, for example, our obsession with artificial intelligence as well. Mm-hmm. And pharmaceuticals and so on. Because if there is all that there is, and when I listen to these people, so they think, oh, you should be grateful. We are going to wire you up, but you live forever as a computer program or something. And I said, because they speak from wrong identification. All they know is matter. All they know is vulgar physical. Not that everything physical is vulgar, but what I'm saying, this from a basic point of view of consciousness, they cannot move beyond this point of consciousness. So if we can, do you want me to cover it immediately with Jung, or should I just cover Jung first a little bit? So,
probably let's do Jung, because right now you're talking about the levels for the audience. The gospel, Mary talks, or Jesus, they talk about the 7 archons that you have to encounter as you go up.
Can I correct it right away? Because I made the same mistake in the other goddess. That's why. Because I said, oh, there are 7 climbs, because everybody's writing about it. And then this is wrong, first of all. I will tell you why. Because the 7 climbs, or the climates or archons, actually you face them only when you're already at level 4.
Really? I didn't know that.
So first we have 11, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the last level, this is the last things you have to let go of. So these are the 7 demons that Mary Magdalene, for example, was.
Of course,
So, but people say, everybody, and all best-selling books, I made the same mistake. It's like the 7 things. But I think people, you miss the basics. There's level 1, 2, 3, and in level 4. You deal with the 7 archons.
So 7 archons on level 4.
Yeah, and everybody says, oh, so it's a little bit like, you just started to meditate, and then, you think you're enlightened, right? Because you got something. So this is a little bit like that. You have to, but it's actually dangerous because you didn't face your shadow, right? So you go through 3 levels. On level 4, you meet the 7 archons, or the 7 deadly sins, however you want to put it, or the 7 additional climbs. And it seems that everybody's missing it, and everybody's giving courses on, 7 seals of Mary Magdalene and so on. And I said, just take a break a little bit, like Mary Magdalene was already on level, did all the work to level 3. Now she's at level 4. And the thing he did for her, Jesus is for her, he helped her to face the last 7 obstacles.
Right.
It's not like she came here, oh, here I am, I'm Mary, like I would like to be purified. She's done all the work. So somehow, because in our modern world, we are so rushed, including myself. As I said, I made the same mistake in my book. It is that we just went to because there's 7 things, but we forgot that there are actually 4 levels, and on the level 4, this is what happens on level 4. That's why levels are really important. So just maybe, so level 2 is craving, or actually it is, it's craving, which is basically desire also, right? So there are certain things when, and in Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it says, you can drop it like a garment, but also it talks about the fact that you can either let go of a desire, or you can do this to get rid of a desire, or you can indulge in the desire, but then you go down. So basically, there's no judgment, but on each of the 3-4 levels, you make a choice up or down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is this level, right? And then there's a third level, which is the level of nous, which is the hook between soul and the spirit, capital S spirit. And Jesus tells her, Mary, you're blessed because you can see me here. So first of all, she can see him, so she can see him in the liminal space.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you're not afraid to see me there, so she's not freaked out that, it's not a ghost or something. And also, where the nous is, there is a treasure. So basically, this is where the actual truth is being revealed. So that's the nous. And there's a fourth level of pneuma or pneuma in Greek, which is actually like cosmic consciousness or Christ consciousness. And this is when you arrived at this level, to stay in this level, because we all had like enlightening experiences, you have to purge the 7 archons. Okay, so to be able to be there, or maybe you had a glimpse of it, and to stay there, like with what's called in esoteric traditions permanently established, in this state, you have to purge your seven demons, 7 deadly sins, or 7 archons. But everybody says, oh, let's purge 7 archons. But if you purge 7 archons from level 1, which is basic, or level 2, no, it's a delusion. And this is when Jung comes. So maybe you go to Jung, okay?
Yeah, let's bring in Papa Jung.
Let's bring Papa Jung. And, I have an interesting relationship with him. From, adoring him to like thinking, oh, he's so naughty, And so, and I'll tell you why, if you don't mind. So first of all, for the first time, he mentioned individuation in 1902, and it was in his PhD. But then he was heavily influenced by Freud, and the title of his PhD, can I read it, is on the psychology and pathology of the so-called occult phenomena. Because, so-called, so it means he was already interested, but he was, good student of Freud, and, Freud would have no time for anything like that. So it's so-called phenomena. And then in 1912, he returns to the process of individuation in his 2 essays on analytical psychology. But 1912 is a very important date in Carl Jung's life, because this is when he basically divorced Freud. Right? So, and then he starts to really work on the process of individuation and what it means. And unlike Freud, who was very clear, right? Like, this is the definition of ego, this is superego, and this is id, and he actually works publicly through his concepts. So he publishes an essay, and he works out through this essay what it means. But basically, so his definition of individuation becomes more and more spiritual as we move with time. By the end of the essay, it's completely about enlightenment, okay? But it starts, like we have to negotiate with the ego and so on. Right. But basically, he says we have to bring together all our parts, especially the parts that we disowned, right? To not only not only embrace them, but also to create the full individual. And he says, at the end, individuation is always spiritual. So it's not only kind of in Freudian terms, negotiating between id and superego, so ego is intact. And at the end of the essay, he says it's actually, once you're fully individualized, you're enlightened. That's why I think this corresponds to the 4th level of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which is a pneuma, when you actually exorcise the 7 archons, as you said, or 7 demons.
Right.
So when I was looking at this, I thought, okay, so Mary Magdalene, that's why I kind of briefly covered, right, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. She has these 4 levels there, and it's her teaching. So interestingly, the process of individuation has also 4 levels. Okay, that's why I went to be psychoanalyst, to the Jungian analyst, and said, "Do you know that?" And I said, "Oh my goodness," because they are interested, because they are analysts, but they opened obviously to spiritual somehow, because they wouldn't be Jungian, they would be Freudian or something.
And
right?
myth, they love myth.
Yeah, they love myth, but they just sometimes struggle with Gnostic, Jung, right? Because
even though without Gnosticism there wouldn't be any Jung.
Yeah. And and if you want, I can tell you later anecdotes about Nag Hammadi and Jung and and so on. But
sure.
But let's stick to the core of the topic. So for individuation has 4 levels, like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene has 4 levels. So the first level is the mask or the persona. So persona, it comes from actually from Latin, when actors were putting on a mask, because to play a part, people were more naive then, right? So, to put on a part. So basically it is like you as a good citizen. It's your social role. It's not true, but it's not who you fully are. So, for example, Miguel is a podcaster, right? Miguel is a father, Miguel is a husband, but that's not all, especially when I talk on controversial topics, I give my bio, I just throw all my degrees at them, so then they have to think I'm legit, what I mean? Not because I'm full of myself, but, it also helps them, there is this, PhD talking, right? So maybe it's not all bad. So, but this is not who you truly are. This is your persona. You're like a good citizen, like in the Roman Empire, right? Like this is. So I'll give you another example. So persona also, like when we moved to Brisbane here in Australia from Melbourne, and I went to a new hairdresser, and he says, "So what do you do?" And I thought, I can create a different, be truthful about myself, be more authentic. So I didn't say I'm academic. I said, I'm a writer, because I was writing my book. And he said, but what do you really do?
So you're a waitress.
Yeah. So he says, I said, I'm an academic. I coordinate 550 postgraduate students. Now, I regain his respect. So in a way, we need this mask, and we sometimes throw this mask at others because, they don't respect us otherwise. If it's not who we, all there is. Or, if you're a guy and you're still dating or dating again, like the girl that you shouldn't date, who comes up at the party and she says, "So, what do you do?" She's asking you about your persona, right? Because she's actually not interested who you are, whether you're compatible, right? It is like, what do you have, baby? Should I waste my time? Do you own or do you rent? So, so this is the persona, right? And this is what corresponds to what Mary Magdalene would say, wrong identification, right? This is just, it's not that it's wrong, like I have his degrees, you're a podcaster, right? But it's not all who you are. The whole depth is not shown there, right? And it's sometimes appropriate in social situations, like, why would you tell everybody your full story? Yeah, nobody would like to talk to you because it would take so long, right? But this is what the problem is, Carl Jung says, if you completely identify with this. Right. Because if you completely identify with your persona, then what if it's taken away from you? For example, you think you're primarily a father or primarily a mother, and then like your children leave, or your husband left you or your wife left you, and then you crash. And this is when midlife crisis happens and so on, because all you had was your social standing and you lost it, or you lost a job, right? In fact, I felt it when I got my PhD, and actually, I couldn't get a job as academic. I already had a job previously, but I took time off to finish my PhD, but then I couldn't get a job as an academic for a while. I had a major tantrum, because I was so attached to this, that, well, it made me feel like somebody. Right. You know what I mean? So this is when the second part comes, the shadow.
The shadow is number 2.
The shadow is number 2. So what is the definition of a shadow? So I'm just going to tell you. Okay, and when we talk about not magical Egypt, when we talk about Egypt, ancient Egypt, also what would be a persona in goddesses? So it would be Isis the matron. Okay, because we know, and I'll explain later, that Isis has many shadows and many sides.
Right.
But Isis, I think it was Caesar that took Cleopatra, to Rome, and she was like, you remember Elizabeth Taylor on a big sphinx entering, Rome, and she was just too much for the decent Romans. So she became the matron. She became later was changed into Black Madonna and so on. The mother, somebody that is, like senator's wife, which is so not true about Isis. So this is Isis's Roman persona. Okay, because I would like to come back to this. So the second one is shadow, and shadow is something that we are trying to disown within our psyche. So something that we don't accept about ourselves, yet it cannot be wished out of existence. These are Jung's words. It is there. You can hide it all you want, but it is there. You can pretend it's not there. You have nightmare, like it will chase you, you will sabotage yourself. And sometimes you may think like, okay, why am I not doing so well professionally? Or what's wrong with my relationships? Because you're not looking at your shadow. Shadow doesn't necessarily mean bad. It means like it is bad before you face it. Okay. So when you remember I was talking about this Isis as a Roman matron, which is a persona. So Isis had a sister, which I believe is her shadow, which is Nephthys. And she was apparently very naughty because she also slept with Seth, who wants a sister like that, right? And she apparently helped Isis to resurrect her. Okay. But in this interpretation of a shadow, actually, Nephthys is Isis, and very often she's portrayed with her back like that. Isis, which is a shadow of the Isis, because Nephthys is the magician. Nephthys is the esoteric one that could not be accepted by the Romans. Right. Because they didn't get it. It was too mysterious, and the magic is scary, and all of these things, right? So Nephthys is a shadow actually of Isis, but it is the most interesting shadow of Isis. This is Isis, the high magician, the Isis who can actually rearrange the matrix of creation, because Isis, as I spoke in the other goddess, is actually into high magic, which means you don't exchange something for something like in lower magic, but you can actually go into the core of matrix or creation and rearrange the pieces to improve things. Okay, so Isis, for example, have to face Nephthys. She has to integrate her, because the story of Nephthys as the naughty sister, that sleeps with your husband, is basically added when she was already disowned from her shadow. Do you understand? When magic was taken away from Isis.
Right, of course.
Okay, so there had to be something to do with this magic. So, okay, there was a sister. Okay, and she was very naughty. She was magical, she was exciting, but she was bad, because there is a sense of danger and unknowingness about it. And that's why Jung says that facing your shadow is a heroic act. And it is a heroic act. Like we all are kind of hiding something from ourselves. Sometimes we don't know what, right? And to actually go through this kind of archaeological analysis and facing it and accepting it and integrating it is like it's heroic. It takes time. It's a true spiritual practice, and it's a heroic act. And it usually means that it completely destroys your persona to a degree, But I can tell you from experience that when my persona was destroyed because I couldn't get a job for a while, it was a long time ago, just as I finished my PhD, which was kind of ironic, right? I had to go into the shadows. I have to descend. I worked really hard on spiritual practice, and I was introduced to esoteric teachings, first of Kashmir Shaivism, which changed my life. And then that's why I can actually read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene now for 2 decades and so on. And now I'm academic again, and I'm doing what I really was meant to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not completely integrated, because I cannot really tell people, oh, I wrote about sexuality and spirituality at my work, okay? And when I did, they didn't know what I was talking about. You know, and stuff. So it doesn't matter. But I am, you know, happy with myself. I don't have this like two sides to myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still give the talks, and I actually managed to integrate it somehow. So this is, and we all have it. And I'm still working on it because, as you see, like it's not fully integrated.
No,
but
always.
It's an ongoing thing. But what I think, for example, some spiritual movements like New Age movement and so on, they just bypass the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they think that you just hold hands and sing and dance and everything will be good. You know, you have to face your shadow. So this is what Jung says.
Well said.
So the third one is in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And also when we go back to the second level, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the sin as such doesn't exist. So basically, there's nothing wrong with you. You just make wrong choices. Like you can make a wrong choice, like not integrating your shadow, right?
Yeah, here's the quote. There is no such thing as sin.
That's right. That's right.
Rather, you yourselves are what produces sin when you act in accordance with the nature of adultery, which is ccalled sin.
Adultery, but you see, this is how it is being translated. When you act not in accordance with your true nature, this is how Jean-Louis.
That's what I mean. Yes.
Because when the adultery and the whole like adulterous things, you know, come back, that you know, that it means you shouldn't sleep with someone else. No, you shouldn't sleep with a wrong identification of who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why, like I say, like I read several translations, and like this one for me is the best. So it's level 2. Then we have level 3, which is really good because it's nous. So nous is the hook between your soul and the higher wisdom, right? But this is where basically human being ends by himself or herself. So it means like a soul also. So this is the spiritual aspect of yourself, but according to this, it is the liminal space. And this is where Jesus tells to Mary Magdalene, you're blessed. A, you can see me there. 2, you're not scared. And this is where the truth of you actually lies, right? And that's why all other disciples say, what is she talking about? You know, like, we don't see it. Where is he? You know, can anybody see him? You know what I mean? And because they were on level 1, which is, you know, identification with the matter. So they wanted Jesus resurrected, like, you know, as he was. Here he comes, you know. Jesus or Yeshua is here. He wears the same dress, you know, that's not dress. I'm sorry. He wears the same clothes, right, and so on. But no, he was in the liminal space. So according to Jung, it is the anima. So anima, as he works through his 2 essays, Jung has 2 meanings. First of all, it has its original meaning from Latin, which is a soul. Right? So this is a spiritual aspect of humanity. And then as he works through his 2 essays on psychoanalysis, on analytical psychoanalysis, he's saying, of course, about anima and animus, which is the most now used. So anima is the feminine and animus is the masculine aspect of our personality. And both women and men have both. It's just that ratio can differ from individual to individual. And this is, if I can digress and say how naughty Jung was about it, right? Because in fact, I'd say that all spiritual traditions say you have to balance your feminine and masculine, right? So Jung is Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Jung, they're spot on. But Jung was quite naughty because although he was German Swiss, he had a rather French attitude towards relationships. And he thought that ménage à trois, personally, suited him most, right? So he was married to Emma, but then he had a kind of a hierophant in his life because like Isis or like Mary Magdalene, you know, was Stony Wolf, right? So there's this woman who was first in analysis with him, and then he says, be my anima, you know, you already, you know, like, so she was his anima, but also, and she, she took him through this deep side of himself, right? But he says, my wife is like basically level 1, right? Because she provides me with security, and he really need grounding, doing work, but he needed, like a hierophant, and she was his hierophant. No. Another woman, which I think it was Marie-Louise, when Tony Wolff moved away, when he moved away a little bit moved towards alchemy, Tony Wolff didn't want to work with him anymore, Marie-Louise. And then there was a third woman, Sabine, I think, Spielreich, who was an analyst, as well. And she was, I like her because she had a little bit of a relationship with him, but then she said, look, I'm not nobody's anima, I have my own career and so on. But what I mean, he kind of said, like, he extrapolated his anima, externalized his anima to other women in his life.
All right.
Okay. But they were very helpful to him in this way, like, especially Tony Wolff or all of them. So it's quite interesting. But basically, we have to integrate the masculine and the feminine in our lives, because this is where the treasure lies. So this is a process of integration. And this is in level 4. So in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is pneuma. And this is when you exorcise the last 7 archons, and which in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is very often negative thinking about yourself. So that's who do you think you are? Where do you think you're going? Mostly because nous is what is humanly possible for our development. And then pneuma, or individuation, is you need help from the above. It is the spirit. So in religious terms, it is, like you get help through your spiritual practice, or, maybe spontaneously or something. So this is where it's coming from. And that's why Jung says, just a moment, Jung says that in level 4, not only you recognize your own innermost uniqueness, but also at the end you attain enlightenment. Okay, so this is
level 4. What's it called? What did he call level 4? 3 is anima.
Yeah, and level 4 is the self. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
self.
name
Okay, yeah.
The self. So in Hinduism, they were very wise. They called small s self, which is the ego, and the capital S, which is the self as Atman, for example, right? So which is the spirit, basically, the spirit. So Jung doesn't use capital and small s, and that's why there is sometimes confusion, because he's working through these concepts in his essays. So first he says, this is now a full individual, but then when you're also enlightened, and it is because he uses self in different ways. And this is when analysts are often confused, because of, I think, this he didn't use the capital S, and he's talking about enlightenment, and he's talking about integration, and they can get integration, but they think, where does the enlightenment come from, right? Because they are not really that interested in this aspect of maybe they are, but they don't make the connection, because you have to really go through like more esoteric interests of Jung that we are doing right on this show and so on. So these are the 4 levels of Jung, which I think really nicely correspond to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And so, for example, I think I missed some examples here. So in level 2, in a shadow, then Isis accepts Nephthys, right? In level 3, in nous, Isis merges with Nephthys, like she accepts her magic. So basically, and this is where your treasure lies. I really love this in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. It is, or Joseph Campbell also intuitively repeated it, right? Like, were you afraid to go, and kind of paraphrasing.
Yeah, where you stumble, there lies your treasure.
Treasure, that's right.
Nobody wants to look at the dragon, but that's where the treasure is.
Correct.
There's many iterations.
Treasure is in the darkest cave, right? Something like that. So this is what it is, like, and it really encourages us to, accept ourselves. And also he says in our own very unique individuality, and this is who we are meant to be, rather than trying to project, ourselves into somebody that we admire, or what we do as teenagers, right? Like we have some idol and we dress up like the girl, or like the guy. But
Right.
this is not. So it encourages us, to develop this uniqueness. But that's why it's such a courageous act, not only because we have to face the shadow, things that we really don't like, accept about ourselves, and something maybe scary about us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be careful with this. That's why he himself needed Tony Wolf to take him, into the underworld, because he needed her to bring him back. He was afraid he would get lost, so he knows how serious it is.
Oh yeah, there's no guarantee you're coming out.
And
That's
there
why
is no guarantee. What is
that's
this
why
Greek myth about Orpheus?
yeah,
Orpheus.
Orpheus.
He
Yeah.
looked back too soon, and that's it. He was lost,
He
right?
didn't come back with his anima.
No, he didn't come back. Yeah, and in fact, he drowned. He in Hades, right? So, so this is the story. But I think the beauty is also in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, when she says, "I left the world with the aid of another world. A design was erased by the virtue of higher design." So basically, whatever we have to fix with ourselves, first of all, we have to put some work, but at the last moment, and it's also very Sufi and it's very mystical, help arrives. What is this saying? Make one step towards God and God will take a million steps towards you, something like that, which is actually
Right.
Rumi paraphrased. So, and this is like, you do this work, and and the ineffable will meet you. So, and I think that Jung had such wonderful intuitions, and that's the reason why there are more Freudian analysts than Jungian analysts, because he's not easy to understand, and you cannot be a Jungian analyst and not go really deep through the journey yourself. When you can be a decent analyst, Freudian analyst, it's all like out for there. There's vocabulary, there is this very simple structure of the psyche, and
Right.
that's why. But I think although I'm not saying that the overlap is perfect, there is an overlap there between, 4 levels of ascension, as I call it, in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, of ascension of consciousness, and, the four elements of individuation, which ends with the self actually not only integrated, but having access to something bigger than the human self.
Wow. Well, I have to admit, what you just said, I think, is pure genius. I think there's, of course, the Jungian community would have to like it. I think you nailed it on the head. In fact, I'm almost jealous. My shadow wants to take away and steal your research. To be like that movie Black Swan and take you away, and I'll take that persona. No, it's really brilliantly said. I mean, in fact, I hope you reach out to Megan Watterson. I bet she will be floored if she heard that too, because it's amazing. So
Thank you.
I'm impressed. It's rare for me to be impressed. I am very impressed.
Oh, thank you. It really means a lot coming from you, But it was, I hope I didn't confuse anyone, who is watching, but your audience is much more sophisticated, Gnostically speaking, and esoterically speaking, spiritually speaking, because when I went to a psychoanalyst, they really liked it, but they said, oh, it was so difficult.
Well, just go to gnosis.org, look at the 4 levels of Mary Magdalene, pull up your other tab for the 4 steps of individuation, and you'll see, oh, Jesus and Mary Magdalene were just prefiguring Jung. Very simple.
That's right. But it's what's really I like about the Jungian analysts, that they are open to it.
It's
they, like when I was giving a talk for them years ago, when I contacted you, like over a decade ago, I think probably now, on 7 sermons to the dead, So when I was doing it for them, they said, oh, thank goodness, because we are trying to read Heller, and this particular book by Heller about 7 sermons is just like, he's brilliant. He's totally brilliant, but it was like agony. It was written, and he said, like, it was very difficult to get anything out of this unless you already have some background, right? Which obviously Heller has, but they don't. They're too busy to study Jung to study other things. So.
No, makes sense. Well, I want to bring Vance in, but first let me do this little promo. He's actually in the chat room, and that is Anon Almost. I want to say yes, Astronosis 3 is happening. Online tickets will be ready next week. We still accepting sponsors. Tickets keep selling well, but I want to talk about one of our sponsors, and that is Anon Almost. Check it out. He will be there. He'll be doing a raffle too, and he's actually a cool guy to hang out with. But he is promoting his book, Revelations on Interstellar Highway. It was written by a self-recovered schizophrenic who goes by the pseudonym of Anon Almost. And yes, he's been on our show to talk about mind parasites and schizophrenia. He's been on Jerry Marzinski's podcast many times to discuss his story. So check it out. It's insanely powerful. But during his time as a schizophrenic, he underwent Gnostic and shamanistic experiences while enduring months of existential challenges. Oh, I can relate. At times he felt Christ-like, and other times being dragged through the darkest depths of hell. Talk about shadow. Hidden within its contents are mystery riddles and breadcrumbs towards gnosis, as it provides glimpses into the universe's magic. It is not for the faint-hearted and will assist with your soul's adventure and the hero's journey. Understanding there are multiple true paths to the Godhead, the genuine ones are paved with love, forgiveness, compassion, and gratitude. Revelations on Interstellar Highway 10 is a useful introductory manual for making the most of our visit here. It is a roadmap and travel guide for thinking in terms of eternity, navigating around the archons, and finding lodging among the aeons. So check it out. Check out his book. I'll have a link in the show notes. And again, he will be at Astronosis with copies of the books to sign it and a very cool raffle. Check out Revelations on Interstellar Highway 10. So, Vance.
Can I just note something at Anon?
Sure.
Because I just saw some documentary by some scholar, psychoanalyst, who was saying that schizophrenics, modern schizophrenics, are often people who would be shamans, and because they have no outlet and have no background to explore their gifts, this is what it turns into, but they're meant to be shamans, right? So it's quite interesting that he made this connection.
Yeah, I mean, doing this David Bowie book, half of his family was schizophrenic and had lobotomies, were thrown in hospitals for their life. He somehow was able to find something. He was always running one step ahead of the schizophrenia, and he was able to express it in music, art, and change. Yeah, all the personas he had. I think there were way of either they were coping skills, or he really was possessed, like shamans are often possessed. The divine madness.
You embody the spirits, right? So
yeah, you're possessed by a figure, and you just have to be that figure until that figure decides to leave you. But Plato saw it as a great honor. For our egos, it's horrible because we don't want to be possessed. How can you impress the guy at the party if you're possessed by a Dionysus or something? How are you going to go to work? But what do you think, Vance? Any questions or comments?
Well, as far as schizophrenics goes, I've known one schizophrenic guy, and one of the problems that I see, that he told us about, is that the visions and voices that he has contradict what material reality is presenting him. So he got himself in trouble that way. Like he'd get in some sort of idea that some girl liked him, but she really didn't. And, he'd pursue it, that type of thing. So it's not always a positive thing. There's a shadow side to schizophrenia too. And to, I guess, successfully recover, you have to be able to recognize the both worlds. You have to be able to recognize the world of illusion and the other world of illusion, the non-material world of illusion.
The integration. That's why persona is not useless, right? You need to have it.
Yeah.
You have to relate to the material reality. You cannot just identify completely with this.
Yeah. That brings me to a question about something you said earlier about not being able to tell people about your tantra and so forth. Being a sign of the fact that you hadn't integrated it yet. Is that necessarily true in all cases? Because sometimes it's just a good idea not to share certain things with other people because they wouldn't understand. It's non-productive, doesn't get you anywhere. But I mean, isn't it possible just to have integrated it and still not just, lay all your cards on the table?
I think it's a fantastic remark, and yes, thank you. And I absolutely agree, because I just have learned to be pragmatic, I must say. So, for example, when I have my staff meetings in the same room, I mean the Zoom staff meetings, so I have this kind of white cover over my book, and a part of me, because it is the child of my soul. So part of mine is a part of me, I'm sorry, is heartbroken. But I learned to be practical, because they would not understand. And in fact, it would create problems, probably. You know what I mean?
Right.
For
Yes.
me. And I still have to earn a living. And I kind of like my job. It's not like it's just something that is very alien to me. Not at all. It is just that the reality about academic life nowadays, that there are few people like April, like Jeff Kripal, or like Diana Pasuka, whom I totally adore, three of them, who actually could get a job in relationship to their PhDs.
Right.
Most of academics, you just have a PhD and that's good. And now this is what we need you to teach. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you have other people, I'm not going to say because I don't want to, it's not my job, who are brilliant, that you had on the show, who are brilliant academics, publish many books on esoteric topics, and they're unemployed. You just occasional scholarship at this university, which is a visiting scholar, which nobody knows. It is an unpaid position. You just get an email of your university, because I tried this after my PhD. You understand? So associate. That means it's an unpaid position. So I had to negotiate it for myself. And although it, for example, breaks my heart, but I actually shared with one of the colleagues who always, pours his heart to me about, his problems. And he looked at me like I was half insane. So, but yes, you're right. I probably integrated it, but I just am being practical. So now I decided to be more radical, because my next book that I'm in the middle of writing is about UFOs as liminal experiences. So when I converted to the other side. So,
Turn a few
I'm
heads.
just having a good time. You know what I mean? Now I'm just having a good time, right?
Yeah, it's becoming more popular though. So you're in an era where it's a little bit more accepted by,
Yeah.
it's all, it's the problem of other people's approval, it's that's essential to the persona. The persona is made up of what you think other people will approve of.
Yeah. And I was a slave, and it was completely unconscious. I was a slave. I couldn't write for a long time because it was what my academic friends would think, and even worse, what would my literary friends think, because I had kind of literary aspirations at a certain stage. So once somebody new aspiring writer wrote to me recently, and I said I could only write when I wrote F-off letter, to all my friends that I, was afraid of academics, and all my literary friends, I never sent the letter. But I wrote it for myself. And I said, if you don't like it, you write your own book. Like it's something. But I had to go through this kind of exercise, because I was completely enslaved to these two things,
Yes.
Well, there's a couple of super chats. Very nice compliments. Chester, who from our Finding Hermes meetings. Great work, Dr. Kujawa, and I always enjoy your presentation and contribution to AM by Gnostic Radio. Thank you. And then we got God Knows, who always has excellent takes, even the comments. Been practicing Kashmir Shaivita Sadhana for 44 years and love Dr. Kujawa's take on the Gospel of Mary. I am very happy to catch this show live. So there you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm happy to be here.
Did the Gospel of Mary say anything about what the spiritual realm is like? I mean, we're going off these 4 levels, and you get enlightened and news, and then up to the other level. What were the advertised rewards, if any?
So this is about when the design was erased by the help of the other design, and now I can repose in silence. So this is almost like it's a divine silence. The journey is over. you one with the one, so to speak, in Neoplatonic terms, right? So it is, in some esoteric traditions, you can choose whether you reincarnate or not, right? And when you're ready, you can just merge with divine consciousness. And this is what it is. So there is nothing to describe, only like repose and silence. You know, like you completed your journey, you have no other desires to explore this or that. You know, maybe you want to be a famous rock star, or, you know, your book sells better in another life, you know.
So that's in the Gospel of Mary? That's actually in there?
Yes, it is actually in the Gospel. This is actually the final
Even
one.
the rock star part. Right
there. Even the rock star, yeah, the rock stars, yeah, that's the rock star
part.
part.
Be Eddie Van Halen in the next life.
And only with a lute.
Yeah.
Or psaltery or whatever they played in those days.
Yeah, so this is when, and now I can repose in silence because the design was elevated, or I don't want to make up the words. With the aid of another world, a design was erased by a virtue of a higher design. So like I now transcended it, basically. Right? I have no other desires. I integrated my shadow. I could go on a journey through the nous, right? I can continue on a higher level. And obviously in some traditions, like in Buddhism, you have bodhisattvas or great yogis in Hinduism, right? And so on. And I presume that maybe Jesus was this kind of being, you know, who just come back to help us, right? They said, no, don't listen to this. This is a horrible noise, you know, just look within, right? But if you don't want to do the work anymore, you can just, you know, go into silence, divine silence.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, but here's a question I have. What is your take these days about the origin of the Gospel of Mary? Obviously, it's part of the Berlin Codex.
Yeah.
Was found with what? Secret Book of John, Sophia of Jesus Christ, Acts of Peter, which is one of, if you think you hate Peter, read the Acts of Peter. That's where he has a crippled daughter, and he heals her, but then he changes her mind and re-cripples her so that she'll stay a virgin and never be corrupted. It's the most twisted thinking in Acts of, but anyway, read the Acts of Peter. Yeah, and then it's the Gospel of Mary is there too. But what would you say? Would you call it Gnostic? Because Karen King says it's Stoic. Others say it's Middle Platonist, although Middle Platonist is Stoicism and Platonism with hatred for the flesh and matter. It's evil. Or would you say, what is your take? It's Egyptian for sure. I don't think
I focus on the Egyptian part, but, you know, I think it is all of this, because we have to basically, what was in the air intellectually and spiritually, all of this was, you know, Platonism was like science nowadays. You cannot say anything against science because you're a heretic, right? So the same then, like everything, universe was seen from a Platonist, they would call themselves Platonist eyes, because Plotinus was not born until a bit later. And, you know, and it obviously has some Stoic undertones, which, you know, because it was overlapping all of this. So in my research, I just basically focus on the Egyptian connection, thinking like which are very difficult to uncover, you know, like that's why I was talking about the hierophants, you know, and the female part of a hierophant, because I'm trying to deal with that. But I think that you cannot really pinpoint it this way, you know, because we are influenced by all of this. So even what I'm telling you now, it's not only, I kind of appropriate Jung to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and vice versa. And I also make it Egyptian in a way because of where it was found. But I'm heavily influenced by my experiences from esoteric Hinduism and Kashmir Shaivism, especially. So, you know, without all of these influences, I wouldn't be interpreting the gospel and Jung the way I am. So I think that this is the same about all of his works. It's not just pure Plato unless it was written by Plato. You know what I mean? Anybody after Plato edit something else of their own, and that's why it is actually valuable. It's actually, in a way, individuation, right? So the same with the Gospel of Mary. And, you know, it's good that scholars like to argue about it, because this is what gives them grants, and, you know, and everybody wants to make a name, but it's still, we are back to a persona here, right? And you know, and sometimes they make, and it's good, because I know that lots of academics are being criticized now, and rightly so. But there's one good thing about academia, it is that you have to give credit to those who came before you. That's the one good. When I see lots of now, when I went alternative, I see lots of alternative shows, and everybody wants to be famous and wants to have most likes on YouTube and views on YouTube, and they repeat things that other people said 2 decades ago and give nobody credit very often, you know. And in academia, you would lose your job. So this is one good thing about academia. You know what I mean? Like, we are taught, it's a medieval dictum actually. We're on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
And that's, you know, a certain humility that comes with this, you know, like we have to, and also the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, even a beautiful piece of esoteric work, it is built on the experiences of all of these people, you know, and who integrated this experience, right? And I think it would be probably, in my opinion, a little bit presumptuous say it's only this or it's only that. It's all of this.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful gospel that has so many dimensions. I mean, I love the fact that Mary's obviously, it says Jesus loved her more than anybody. She's the one that has it. But then Andrew and Peter turn on her. But I have empathy for Peter, because remember that line he says, if they kill the Savior, what do you think they'll do to us? I mean, he's afraid, because he's right. The world's going to crush them. The world's going to, because of their secrets, and she's standing her ground. So he's afraid. So he's taking it out on her. And then she's defended by, who's the one?
Levi or something.
Levi, who's, and they're all symbols. He's sort of the middle ground. Peter is the id. You know, there's a lot going on.
I think I really appreciate your perspective on Peter, because I was just like, I am Mary's team, you know. But now when we spoke once about Peter, and I thought, yes, you're right, because in some ways, like, it represents humanity now. And maybe ever. Like, look how we are being, just taken to our current day, being manipulated. Not only you are in America, I don't know how you survive a single day, you know, if you know what is being thrown at you.
The amount of propaganda,
yeah, I know. And then, but you know, in Europe, even in a small country like Poland, where my mother, it's the same polarity. Somebody's spinning the spin, you know, and like globally, because now they can do it because of technology globally. So we are the Peters, so to speak, like in this respect, like we don't know what we actually have no clue. You know, we have no clue. So unless you decide to transcend it, you go mad, you know, and it's like, what will happen to us? Like, who is a good guy? Who's a bad guy? You know, like, I wish it was like in a Western, you know, there's a bad guy, there's a good guy, you know, there's a high noon, I'm sorry, and, you know, somebody in a good guy wins. But we don't even know who is a good guy, who is a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like, at least I don't, you know, because I always try to understand both perspectives. I just don't like any of these perspectives. So we are at the moment, like Peter, like, yeah. And also from the perspective of Gospel of Mary Magdalene, he's still on level 1 and maybe level 2, which is desire. You know, he wants to know, but he doesn't. It's somehow not given to him. And it's ironic psychologically because, you know, he did everything for him, right? He stood up and left, and yet he doesn't see what she sees. I mean, like,
I would feel frustrated. I get jealous if somebody has a better mystical, because I want to see what they see.
I know.
Like, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do right? You know, we do the same rituals.
I was the first, you know.
I was the chosen one. I was the chosen one, like Anakin Skywalker. And here's some quotes for you. This one, I think, gives it kind of betrays a Gnostic attitude. Jesus, they're talking about laws. Go then, preach the good news about the realm. Do not lay down any rule beyond what I determine for you, nor promulgate law like the lawgiver. He's talking about the demiurge, or else you might be dominated by it. So he's talking about Yaldabaoth right there.
That's right. And he says, like, no, don't create any more laws. No, you know, which obviously people say, like, no, like, shouldn't we have like 15 new commandments? You know, make your mark, right? And he says, no, you know, go within. It's beautiful. It's truly amazingly beautiful.
And then here's another one. Be on your guard so that no one deceives you by saying, look over here or look over there. It sounds very Gospel of Thomas. For the child of true humanity, the old translation is Son of Man, exists within you. Follow it. Those who search for it will find it. So another beautiful. I don't know if that's Mary or Jesus. One of the two is saying that, because there's part where Mary.
That's Jesus. That's Jesus.
Okay,
so it's from part 1. Yeah.
Okay. So there's some beautiful quotes right there.
Yeah,
Here's one that's been in my head recently, Joanna, which for some reason I forgot it. But remember this quote from Gilles Gispel?
Gnosis is the knowledge of the heart. Yes, it is actually quoted in the translation. I mean, in the introduction to the translation that I use. Yes, Gnosis is the knowledge of the heart. And very often, in some translations and interpretations, nous is the heart. But I do not particularly like this in a way, because heart can be confusing too. You know what I mean? Sometimes people think heart is like a romantic thing. Oh, but
I love new agey.
Yeah, it's too new agey. When I think it is more than just a heart, but the heart is a big part of it, but it's not just a heart. Yeah.
Well, I think what some people have said is that in Egyptian lore, the heart was the nous, because the brain was just this spongy stuff that they would throw out after we died. It just filtered information, and all the information came to our heart. And that's, and
it's
then
like an
we
antenna.
thought with our heart. Yeah, we really thought with our heart. And Steiner says, the heart actually has its own intelligence.
Yeah, I got into Steiner recently, and I really actually like what he's saying. So.
Yeah. What's old is new. What's new is old. So Any questions on your side, Vance?
Well, I asked them just before. Nothing new is coming to mind, although I feel they should have lots of questions, but I'm just sitting here,
That's okay. We all do our best.
Well, I always get Karma Koala gave us a nice super chat. Looking forward to catching up later. So thank you. And yes, the replay, of course, will be right after this live show. And tomorrow, of course, I will have the audio version on all podcast providers. So, and it is on Rockfin Live now. Rumble, I didn't do it, but I'll upload on Rumble and a few other video platforms, so you will be able to find it anywhere your little heart. Sure, of course, yeah.
Advertise, apart from the other goddess, because in 2 weeks I will be giving a workshop, a 3-hour live workshop on the esoteric gospel of Mary Magdalene. So that I do the Magical Egypt. So if somebody's interested, you can check it out. You posted the link anyway, right? So
and I have it right here. Where are you, Lisa?
Yeah. So I'm obliged to do some of it. Yeah, I'm obliged to do some, how do you call it?
Is that really wow? Is that wow dot magical?
Yeah, I think it's wow. It is wow, because it was Women of Wisdom. It was in a Women of Wisdom, and I think it is the same website. That's why.
Okay, everybody, it's wow, not www. It's wow.
No, it's wow.
Didn't want them to confuse it.
Yeah.
And what does your workshop entail? 3 hours. It'll be more than this. What does it entail?
3 hours, because this is where just we are talking, and I'm going to go through the same through the levels. But what it really has, it will also have meditations and kind of structured journaling and guided meditation. So let's look into our shadow, or what is your persona, like this is how can we work through this, then the shadow, then nous, because it's different for everybody, right? So so basically it has practical aspects, so it's not a lecture. Content wise, so to speak, it will be similar. I'm not even sure if I'll mention Jung, because I want to focus on quotes from the gospel and the 4 levels and what are your last 7 archons, but there are exercises that go with it, and we also have a workbook. It's just the questions and guided meditations that comes with it. So it's just more of a practical aspect, but content wise, very similar.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, shadow work is very popular today, but I don't think people understand the amount of work that it entails. Do you ever feel that people don't focus enough on complexes? I think we've had this. I mean, nobody ever talks about complexes, and Jung and Freud said that was the most important part. I mean, even though the shadow is a complex, the ego is a
The shadow
complex.
is in a way is a complex. Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
yes,
I
yes.
would agree. Yeah, I think, but it's good to work on a shadow. But I really like the fact that we were actually 4 levels to individuation, and it's not enough because okay, so integrated a shadow, and now what? You know, like in terms of what I'm really into is a spiritual experience. You know, so what happens after that? So okay, so now you do not reject an aspect of yourself. So for example, you came out, or you know, you can talk to your colleagues about a book, you know, that they don't understand, you know, because it's, but so what? So you really have to take it to this liminal space, you know, and I think what we really have to do is focus on nous and the liminal spaces. That's why, you know, what I'm writing at the moment, it is because modern science, which is the modern dogma, does not allow to look there. You know, it doesn't exist because it's not fully material. When Jung understood, and obviously Mary understood, and you know Jesus understood, and any esoteric teacher understood, include you know, and Plato, you know, understood, although not Aristotle, he didn't have a clue, you know, about it. Just because something is not fully material doesn't mean that it is not real, right?
Exactly.
So that's the liminal space of the nous. So that's why I think that just working on your shadow by itself is okay, better than nothing. But then it's really opening our eyes to other perceptions. You know, the life, I'm convinced the life is so rich, and some people understand it as, you know, ghosts, UFOs, or, you know, spiritual experiences or something, but it is all there. And you just have to have the eyes to see. But as I said in another show, the more you see it, the more you see it. You know, like you just have to give yourself a permission to see this. But to give yourself permission, you have to know it exists, you see? If you don't believe that nous exists, if you don't believe that liminal or imaginal exists, you know, there are popular words nowadays, imaginal, and people sometimes just blah, 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 imaginal, blah, blah, blah. You know, but if you don't know that it really exists and what it can be possibly, because we don't know 100%, you cannot open up to this, right? So it has to be this next step, and nous is the key, you know. That's why, as I said, everybody made mistake, you know, go from pneuma to 7, let's exercise. You're not even, you know, and including me in my own book, you know, I just went, 7 times, you know.
Yeah, all these years.
Yeah. So, and then I thought, oh my goodness, you know, like but that's why if you promise yourself you'll never write another book, you know, and then you say you have to write another book because you have learned since then, right? It's not, you have grown. And if you, like you, I have this desire to share what I have learned, you know? So then like, okay, so I cannot leave it there then, right? Because I cannot like re-edit the book over and over again, right? Like it's just another book now. Right. So we grow, we learn. But liminal, I would say liminal is focus on the liminal. Yes, work on your shadow, focus on liminal. And yes, sometimes you still have to keep a persona because, as wisely then said, some things you just should not share with some people, you know. Yeah. So it's just practicality of life.
Very true. And what are some of your, do you practice any sort of Jungian therapy? What are your spiritual practices today?
Well, I don't practice, but I was in analysis for a year, but it was Freudian analysis. And eventually it got really weird. So, you know, I left. So for some reason, the Jungian analyst asked me to give lectures like long time ago. And I now every 2 years or so, when I come up with a new something, I think, you know, and they're always happy. So this is how it happened. But I am a meditator for like last 20 years. So like a serious meditator.
What type of meditation?
I'm sorry?
What type?
Okay.
Like these days I do TM and I love it. I love transcendental meditation.
So I start with mantra, you know, so I start with mantra, but also through my husband, you know, he was a follower of a particular teacher from Muktananda's side, talking about Kashmir Shaivism, and who was using technology, which basically helps you to coordinate your left and right brain spheres. And I'm listening to this. It's just like an ocean wave, you know, but it's actually, and then you still can do mantra, which I do. And then it just helps you to get into the groove faster, and then I do maybe mantra 2 or 3 times and I put it away and I then sit in meditation. But I also do something that you would probably call like positive cognitive psychology. Every morning when I wake up, I have a set of affirmations, so to speak, because my mind is negatively wired, so I have to work on it. And we have like small altars, like even here, you see Saraswati here, which is goddess of wisdom. This one. Goddess of wisdom, and Lakshmi here, and there's a Ganapati, and we have a Buddha and so on. I would like to have, and I have Mary Magdalene here on the cover of my book, and I would like to have Jesus, but I never liked a picture of Jesus that I really liked. That didn't look cheesy to me. So I don't know, maybe my own thing comes through, because I don't like crucifixes. But I do kind of morning prayers in front of these little altars. So I wake up, I do affirmations, positive cognitive psychology. I do some small prayers in front of every other little altar, and then I meditate later during the day. So
wonderful. Yeah, I got to work on my altar too. I have the whole altar. I've got Buddha, religious thing.
We have a beautiful Buddha.
Yeah, incense. Just choke it, destroy myself with incense. I love incense more than anything. The only problem is I have my 2 demigods that I worship, Elvis and Philip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick is my altar.
Of course.
Yeah, so I have those 2, but because that's what speaks to me, and Buddha. So I do have like I've got a cross and some Hindu gods and other things, but my personal altar is Elvis and Philip K. Dick.
And also we have Shiva Nataraj, which is the dancing Shiva.
Yeah.
So, but I do not worship any of this in a way. I just believe that they are aspects of the one, so to speak, platonically speaking. So that's why Saraswati here, because wisdom, and I consider myself a devotee of wisdom, or disciple of wisdom, or Sophia, right, and so on. So yes, so just trying to connect with this energies.
Yeah, well, good deal. Well, yeah, everybody highly suggests you have some sort of practice. As Joseph Campbell said, you're just reenacting the myth, but myth is how we get close to the world of archetypes, to the news, the imaginal. So that's the game we play, and everybody's different. Your mileage may vary, but you do have the news. That's what the Gospel of Mary and the Stoics said. We all have access to the news.
That's right. We absolutely do.
Awesome. Well, we are at the end. Thanks for the support, everybody in the chat. Wearing your chaps? No, everybody in the chat room. Glad it didn't turn into Chatico. It's been a while, and it's been, as always, an incredible conversation. Again, I love that idea of connecting the Gospel of Mary. I'm very happy. It was time for me to discover. That's all. The higher part of me says, be grateful. It was your time to learn this. Now you can use it. So that works. But yeah, great conversation. And Vance, thanks for keeping us company.
Oh, loved it. Hearing about the Gospel of Mary. Fantastic. Thanks, Joanna. Good to see you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone.
It was a blast. Yeah, thank you, Joanna. We look forward to your book. I hope that your book comes before my David Bowie book comes out, but we'll just let the spirits take us where they may, and we'll see what happens. We are in their hands. We are the vessels of greater energy. So
I'm really happy about your Elvis book. I have just a fantastic feeling about it. So.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, the cover will actually it's coming out April. Well, it'll be available on Amazon. I think bookstores will actually be like January, because they'll hit the bookstores first, but they'll have I'll show everybody the cover next month and everything.
Oh wow!
So, is it blue suede? Does it have a blue suede cover? Blue suede cover.
I don't know about blue suede.
Yeah, like blue suede shoes.
Oh, it's blue.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right, everybody. Well, everybody, I hope you are having a good 4th of July holidays, having a good weekend, and we will see you soon. And yes, next week we will have Richard Smoley, and paralleling Joanna, we'll have a show on UFOs. So check it out, and thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself. And as I say, write your own gospel, live your own myth. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.